Hello, welcome to A Conversation With, here at CAU-TV, right here on the beautiful Clark Atlanta University campus. I'm Tammy Gordon Parnell. Today's conversation is with Isiah Parnell, representing the U.S. Department of State, and John Mark Winfield, representing the U.S. Agency for International Development. And they are both diplomats at residence here at the Atlanta University Center. And we're going to start off talking with Isiah Parnell, who is with the U.S. Department of State. He has been a diplomat for over 30 years. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start about, I'll start off talking about what is a diplomat? What's the job of a diplomat?
So a diplomat is a U.S. citizen who has the privilege of representing our great country in embassies and consulates around the world, promoting U.S. interests in a wide variety of areas. And those areas range from the protection of American citizens in distress to helping keeping our country safe, to improving military relationships between our countries and countries abroad, on issues of climate change. We try to open markets for U.S. goods and services. There are just a wide variety of issues on which the U.S. diplomats work on a daily basis.
So you have served at a number of posts abroad and are now returning to the U.S. here in Atlanta.
Absolutely. So a Foreign Service officer would normally expect to spend about 75% of their career living and working in countries outside the U.S. and 25% of their career working at places like the Department of State or the UN or other international organizations located both in the U.S. and around the world. My family and I spent over 30 years working in various places. In the Americas, we worked in Mexico City, other places in Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, Jamaica, and we've also had the great privilege and honor of serving in Africa. We've served in Accra, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire, and most recently in Nairobi, Kenya.
Sounds exciting. So talk a little bit about the diplomat in residence. What do you do as diplomat in residence now that you're back in the U.S.?
So there are 16 mid and senior level Foreign Service officers that serve as diplomats in residence at colleges and universities around the world. And our basic responsibilities are twofold. First, we want to explain to the broader American community exactly what diplomats do overseas, how we spend foreign assistance, how we interact with other countries to both protect American citizens and promote U.S. interests around the world. Those are two basic responsibilities, even though those responsibilities bear fruit in a wide variety of areas, again, from climate change to trying to help interdict narcotic traffickers, counterterrorism issues, opening free market, a whole range of issues.
And as diplomat in residence, you're trying to encourage people to join and make them aware of what the...
So step one is to talk to people about what diplomats do, and step two is to really encourage Americans from all walks of life, all parts of the country, all races, all genders, to compete to become Foreign Service officers, to understand that there are careers in international affairs that might be of interest to them.
Okay, so you work specifically for the Department of State, even though there are many other U.S. agencies represented at posts abroad. But I feel like even though the Department of State is mentioned frequently in the news for a variety of reasons, a lot of people, really aren't aware of what the whole mission of the Department of State is.
Well, you name it, we do it overseas. And again, our primary goal is to promote the U.S. overseas and to act as the principal interlocutor with overseas governments about U.S. Priorities and U.S. values. So in one nation, we may be helping a government hold free, fair, and transparent elections. In another nation, we may be negotiating free trade agreements to allow U.S. goods and services access into markets. In some nations, there might be a situation where there's a natural disaster that leads to Americans in distress, and we try to provide services for those Americans in distress. Lots of foreigners want to travel to the U.S. as tourists or as students, so we want to do things to help expedite that travel so that we understand who wants to travel. We are protecting the security of our nation by making sure that tourists who want to come here, people who want to come here to live, work, study, either permanently or temporarily, mean no harm to our great country. So just a wide variety of areas.
Okay, and this is implemented by a wide variety of careers as well, no? You have not only the people who are executing U.S. Department of State policy, but other matters as well. And we'll do that when we come back. We'll talk a little bit about ways that people can serve within the Department of State as diplomats, and also a little bit about your career.
Great, I look forward to it.
Okay. And we'll be right back with more of our conversation with Isiah Parnell.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed all that.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education. What are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else?
Or will you dare do something different?
Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills, the smarts. Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget.
That would be cool.
Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself? What are you gonna make of me?
And welcome back. We're still here having a conversation with Isiah Parnell, diplomat in residence. When we left, we were talking about the various ways that people can serve in the Foreign Service with the Department of State. So there are a number of fields that are actually represented besides policy types, correct?
Absolutely. There's a job for a person with virtually any skill set to join the Foreign Service and represent our great country abroad. As a Foreign Service officer, there are 5 career tracks. There are political officers, economic and commercial officers, public diplomacy officers, management officers, and consular officers. And you select a career track, and you could expect to spend probably 3/4 or 80% of your career working within those particular career tracks, although there might be opportunities as you rise in your career, as you progress in your career, to work outside your particular career track. So for example, if you're an economic and commercial officer, you might be working on treaties to promote U.S. goods and services abroad. You might be making sure that countries allow American firms to compete for contracts overseas. Your job is to make sure that American U.S. goods and services have an opportunity to compete in global markets around the world. If you're a consular officer, again, you might be interviewing people for non-immigrant and immigrant visas. You might be helping an American in distress. My new favorite story about the work of consular officers is related to our last tour in Kenya. There was civil unrest in South Sudan. There were scores of Americans who found themselves trapped in that situation, who wanted to get out of South Sudan, and they called on our embassies to provide assistance to help them leave South Sudan. Consular officers and others marshaled the service of our U.S. military, talked to governments in both Kenya and South Sudan, and made a way for hundreds of American citizens to leave South Sudan safely.
And you, how did you get into this, and what career track did you choose?
So there are a couple of ways to join the Foreign Service. The most common way is by taking the Foreign Service Officers Test. The test is offered 3 times a year in February, October, and June. It tests things like general knowledge of American history, American culture, what's going on currently in international affairs. It tests your writing skills, that sort of thing. And it's easy to sign up. The only requirements are that you're over 21, less than 60, and you're an American citizen. You don't need a college degree to sign up to take the test. Most people who are successful at becoming Foreign Service officers usually have an undergraduate or graduate degree, but that is not a prerequisite to take the test. There are practice tests online. Our website is www.careers.state.gov, so I'd encourage people to sign up and take a look at that website and sign up for the test. If you can answer 2 questions affirmatively. The first question is, I'm proud to be an American, and I would be proud to represent our country overseas. The second question is, you have to be available for posting anywhere around the world. There are 250 diplomatic missions around the world. Some of them are in places that are unsafe or have difficult living conditions or are unhealthful, and so you have to be willing to serve anywhere around the world. If you can answer those first 2 questions affirmatively and you have an interest in serving our country, then I encourage you to look at our website. The other way that people could get into the Foreign Service is through our graduate fellowship programs. We have 2 great fellowship programs for undergrads that want to go on to graduate school. One is called the Wrangle Fellows Program, pays for 2 years of graduate school to get a master's in a degree that's broadly related to international affairs. And then upon completion of your graduate degree, you're in the Foreign Service for 5 years. The second way is the Pickering Fellowship that has an application deadline that's normally around the middle of January. Again, pays for 2 years of graduate school in a degree that's broadly related to international affairs, and upon completion of that degree, you're in the Foreign Service for 5 years.
And so after the 5 years, then what? I mean, do you continue in the Foreign Service, or do you have to start a new process? Or
so if you look at annually, there is a survey taken regarding the best employers in the U.S. The U.S. State Department always ranks really high in that survey. So most people who come in as a Wrangle or Pickering decide that they want to continue their service with the Department of State. So that's normally what happens. It's another way to attract minorities and women and increase the diversity that we have with the State Department. And that's really another important goal of my job here as diplomat in residence. We really want a Foreign Service that looks like our country. We want a Foreign Service that's, racially diverse, geographically diverse, has its fair share of women and men. There are just opportunities that abound for all of the citizens of our great country.
Okay, wonderful pitch. Thank you very much, Isiah Parnell. And we'll be right back with John Mark Winfield. We'll talk a little bit about the United States Agency for International Development.
Time to wake up. I've got a job to do today.
I've got a job to do today.
Don't forget, you've got a job to do today.
Hey, Mom. I got the job. Thanks.
I've got the job. Welcome aboard.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Your donations to Goodwill fund job training programs right in your community.
Feels good to start fresh, right?
Sure does.
And like that, you're a job creator.
Hello, we're back once again, this time with diplomat in residence, John Mark Winfield. He represents the United States Agency for International Development. Welcome, John Mark.
Thank you very much, Tammy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you here. Okay, so the Diplomat in Residence program, Isiah explained a bit. The State Department has had this program for a while across the country, but it's relatively new for USAID, is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. I'm the first. We only have 2. The U.S. Agency for International Development is very small in comparison to the Department of State. So we only have 2 right now. We do look to expand as we get more funding to do so. But the general intent is very similar to that of the Department of State.
And you serve the same region as does the Department of State dip-in residence?
Actually, so there's a little bit difference. We are in 5 states, so it's Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida.
Okay.
And but my nucleus right now is right here in the Atlanta area and the center here.
Okay. So talk a little bit about sort of the difference between the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and the Department of State, and how the missions differ in your work around the world.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, USAID is the lead agency for providing development assistance, as well as humanitarian assistance around the world, to people around the world. We do receive policy guidance from the Secretary of State, so we are generally under the umbrella of the Department of State. But our focus is on ending extreme poverty. And so assistance to 100 countries. We're only in 100 countries. Not all of them are developed. Not all of the 250 that the Department of State services or have embassies are developing. And so, but USAID is only in developing countries, and we're in 5 regions: Europe and Eurasia, Latin America and the Caribbean, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Asia.
So what sort of development work do you do? I mean, are you out there in the neighborhoods and in the campos and in the, talk a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. We're working in rural areas as well as urban areas. But we're working on a number of disciplines: education, agriculture, environment, health, of course, which is our biggest sector. Economic development is a large one as well. So those are our major sectors. And the one that I forgot was governance. And so we do crisis stabilization, and governance is another of our relatively large areas where we're addressing the accountability issues that some countries have, corruption, good governance across the board, free and fair elections, and so that we're vast in our disciplines.
So given that we're in an election year, does your mission or anything about your work, does it change based on the administration you're serving?
Well, and I appreciate that question. I think most people will appreciate that question, given what we're going through right now. USAID has enjoyed kind of across the aisle support for quite a number of years. Regardless of your political persuasion, you tend to support the good stuff that we do for people who are in need around the world. I personally don't feel that will change going forward. I think that whomever is in that seat will embrace and understand the importance of the work that we do for the impoverished around the world.
Okay. And talk a little bit about your own career. And where did you start? What made you join USAID? And where it's taken you around the world.
So you know, I had my start primarily. I was working for Peace Corps in Washington. Okay. Had not heard of Peace Corps, and I was in graduate school at Howard, HU, and started working there as a clerk. Just answering phones and doing photocopying, and I learned about Peace Corps, and when I finished my graduate degree, I became a Peace Corps volunteer. So that was my start in the business. Right. I stayed with Peace Corps for about 12 and a half years doing various things, and mostly staff, but also a Peace Corps volunteer where I was a special education teacher. But then I moved to USAID in 1992, so I've been with USAID for 26 years.
And we'll be right back with more with John Mark Winfield, diplomat in residence with USAID.
You've messed up your son's haircut.
Mom?
Do you A, try to fix it?
Like it never happened.
B, work with what you got? Or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, baby.
As a parent, There are no perfect answers, but you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Fancy pants peanut butter? A big screen television? You haven't even bought a sofa yet. A motorcycle? When your father finds out, he's gonna flip his shoes with 2 buckles? What do you even need 2 buckles for? Mr. Big Shot, buying whiskey shots for everybody in the bar. From the looks of it, I'd say nobody even remembers. Feed the pig.
And welcome back to our conversation with John Mark Winfield, diplomat in residence with USAID. Talk a little bit about USAID and the difference between the type of work that you do and the type of work that the State Department does.
So Tammy, typically when we look at U.S. foreign policy, we kind of place it in 3 different pots: diplomacy, development, and defense. And so USAID is the lead agency for delivering development assistance or satisfying that development component or pillar of U.S. foreign policy. We serve in 100 countries throughout the world. And we're working in a large number of areas. There's health, education. There's governance, stabilization in crises, which is one section. Engineering. We have environment and climate change. And I think I probably forgot one. And then we have some other areas too of employment, but there are support functions, accountants, right. Managers, contracting officers and the like.
Okay, but a lot of you are really out there in the trenches, no? Doing the real development work that helps these other countries.
And that's the fun part for us,
right.
Getting out there and seeing our projects. And we work, that we deliver our assistance through partners, and those partners implement our projects overseas. And so as a Foreign Service Officer with USAID, getting out there to see those projects, the ones that you've worked hard to design, mm-hmm.
Implement,
and pray for the success that we seek. But going out there is absolutely wonderful.
So are most of the projects, are they sort of long-term, most of them?
Most are. And we look for the sustainability in the projects themselves, not just dropping money on an issue, but teaching the local population how to take that resource and making it into a sustainable solution for their development issue.
So how does your mission change based on the administration you're working for? I mean, that would be relevant now because we're in an election year. Now, given whichever nominee wins the presidency, would your work, would the mission, would anything change?
Well, we hope not. And in the past, USAID has had support on both sides of the aisle. Great support. In fact, one of our largest projects, the one that addresses HIV/AIDS throughout the world, is one that was done through a Republican administration, right. Adopted by the subsequent Democratic administration, and it's continued to be strong and receive support. And we hope the same for all of our projects, climate control, health, and which are our larger ones, and power, energy. Those we hope to have continued support, even regardless of the administration that comes on board.
Do you anticipate any kind of change, just sort of in general, in terms of region of the world? I mean, a lot of people will say that Africa is the place to look now for changes and for just our interaction and that type of thing. With your mission, how would you see?
Well, I think that as of right now, we probably are focused on the ones that will continue for a bit. Africa is a focus of ours. I think the greater number of people, a percentage of the population of that continent, are impoverished or in poverty and fall into the poverty level. than any other part of the world. But we will continue our work in the Middle East. We will continue our work in Latin America and Asia, for sure.
Okay. Where have you been? Where has the USAID taken you?
So my first post was Kenya, and then from there to Benin, Haiti, Afghanistan, Uganda, and most recently Liberia.
Wow. Now you have some interesting stories to tell about Liberia. Let's get into that a little bit. So you were there for?
I was there for 2 years.
2 years.
A little over.
And you happened to be there during the Ebola crisis.
That's right. I thought that, you know, as I moved to the winter of my career, that I would spend, you know, some wonderful time in Liberia, which there's a wonderful historic link with the African Americans, and just chill, if you will. Right. Well, no, that's not quite how it went. I was there for three months, and there was the Ebola outbreak across the border in Guinea, and then it moved across to Liberia. And it could not have chosen a more vulnerable country, Liberia being one of the poorest of all of the countries in the world. But I will say to you and to anyone, I have not been more proud of my country and the actions of my government, because between USAID, which was the lead agency, the Department of State, CDC, and the Department of Defense, NIH, together they worked as an outstanding team to do what needed to be done to push back Ebola in that country.
Right, right. I mean, that's why you're there. That's why the embassies are there, in part.
That's what we do.
And,
yes.
But how anxiety-ridden was a tour like that? I mean, how much did you worry about your own health or health of other folks at the embassy, or I don't know whether you had family there or not, but...
So it was just myself and my daughter, my oldest daughter at the time. And there came a time when things got heated, and so the Department of State made a decision that all official Americans would under a certain age and who were not working officially in a position, that they would they would leave. You know, what we do is first and foremost is the safety of our people. Right. But at the same time, we had a mandate. We wanted to help the government, so you couldn't send everybody out. Right. And so there was some risk, but that's what we sign up for. That's what Foreign Service officers do. It was a wonderful time, even though there was some hardship, and more power to the people of Liberia, because they also stepped up to work with us and to accept our partnership in getting it done.
Okay, so we're going to have to wrap it up now. But you are here at the Morehouse campus. Tell us, you know, what your expectations are from your position here.
So first of all, I'm just elated to be on the part of these iconic campuses. Absolutely wonderful. What I'd like to do, and what I've been sent here to do, is to help with ensuring that the face of America overseas is very much like the face of America here. In other words, we need some diversity among our ranks. And so bringing in more African Americans is at the top of my list of things to accomplish while I'm here.
Thank you very much, John Mark Winfield. And thank you to both of our guests today, Isiah Parnell and John Mark Winfield, diplomats in residence at the Atlanta University Center. My name is Tammy Gordon Parnell. This has been A Conversation With.